Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Earnest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $eJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you have not already, please subscribe to our YouTube page, also our Facebook page, and like, subscribe, and share our handles on all your social media. Anything you look at, we're there. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we even on TikTok. All right, so please make sure you guys follow us. If you like the content, leave a comment, leave a rating on Google or Spotify, Google Podcast, Spotify. Let us know that we're doing a good job. All right. Thank you guys very much. So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Miss Jamie. How are you?
I am awesome, Ernest. Thank you. How are you?
I am great. I'm feeling good, man. And just ready to jump into this conversation. But first of all, let me say thank you for being here. Thank you for being on. You could have been doing anything else, but you took out time to be here with me and my listeners. And I definitely appreciate it. And I want you to know that up front.
Oh, yeah, right. Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for using your platform, your voice, and your heart to have this hard conversation that's much needed. So yeah, thank you.
No problem. And I think that, although we're thanking each other, I think there's going to be a lot of other people who thank us for having this conversation and opening up these doors to conversations that we don't always have. A lot of times that is not spoken about. Sometimes it's hidden. Sometimes is hidden for a reason or swept under the rug. But we're going to get into it. But before we get into all that, because we don't even know what we're talking about, do me a favor, introduce yourself and tell our listeners what it is that you do.
Oh, yes. So I'm Jamie Wright, just a small town girl from the northeast part of Oklahoma. I come from humble beginnings. I live in the Houston area now. By career trade, I am a program analyst. And I like to tell people since 2020, I'm an accidental advocate. So I'm a motivational speaker. I brand myself as a resilient and encouragement speaker. I am a mother. I am a daughter. I am a sister. I am a child of the Most High. And so that's me in a nutshell.
Okay. So the reason why we end up connecting, I don't remember what I came across, but I know I came across your information on one platform or another, and what caught my attention was that you were dealing with or speaking about domestic violence. And so I wanted to have you on again because my platform is to, talk about, every area of our lives where we have some kind of problem, whatever. And so I want to have people on that have dealt with it, have overcame it, and is willing to share their story to help someone else, to get over it. And so, if you can tell us a little bit about your experience with domestic violence, and how did you get to be in the space now that you share your voice and your story?
Beautiful question, Ernest. Well, my first experience with domestic violence that I remember was about around the age of 3. I grew up in a very toxic environment at home. I have one older sister. My sister and I was exposed to domestic violence and sexual abuse at very, very young ages. As a result of a lot of that unhealed trauma and seeking the love from a father and from a man, I found myself pregnant at 13 years old, had been pregnant 5 times by the time I was 19 years old. Fast forward, was married, managed to pick myself up by my bootstraps. I moved into the projects when I was 16 years old after being emancipated, after giving birth to my oldest daughter at 14, went to the projects, pulled myself out of there, was able to buy my first house when I was 18 years old as a result of working at the bank that getting a loan at the bank that I worked at. So got married, met my first ex-husband around 17 years old. We divorced around 32. Lots of, I can own my piece in it now from the work that I've done, and so can he. And so as a result of that, we are friends. We do a beautiful job co-parenting, so forth and so on. So after that, I'm like healed, Ernest. I'm understanding some of why I did the things that I did when I was a young girl, trucking along. My oldest daughter is graduating college. She's a graduate of University of Oklahoma. She's in dental school now. So life is good, right? My youngest nursing, living her life. Fast forward 2018, I met this tall, dark, and handsome, fine brother, ordained minister. We were in the Dallas area. He lived in the Houston area, but we met in Dallas. Hit it off instantly. Super solid guy. We dated for about a couple of years, from 2018 to 2020. In 2020, we exchanged vows. I moved from Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas to Houston, Texas. Thought I was going to live this amazing life. Thought that we were going to do amazing things in the kingdom. Finally was going to get that healthy love that I'd never experienced. Finally, I was going to have that marriage despite being 13 years old and pregnant, despite coexisting with mental illness conditions. I was going to have it all, right? And all in my world at that time was just simply to be loved and to love. And moved from Dallas, Fort Worth to Houston after we exchanged vows in February of 2020. By April of 2020, I was homeless, broken, as a result of domestic violence. Never in a million years would I thought that I would be in a homeless shelter in the wake of the pandemic. If you remember, it's kind of hard to believe it's been like 2.5 years that we all endured the pandemic, but it's what's so, right? So the stay-at-home orders was in place around March of 2020. And so by April, it was in my world. And now I know, because I speak, my story in a way to shed light and to hopefully bring understanding and awareness and healing. that it wasn't just in my home that domestic violence was happening. It was in lots of people's homes. So that is, yeah, how I got in this space. Like I said, never in a million years thinking that I would be homeless. I mean, I'm worked really hard to get an education, worked really hard to have the career that I have now, worked really hard that I thought at that time to work on myself, to, be self-accountable, to understand the brokenness inside myself so that I would stop breaking people because I was broken. So, yeah, never in a million years would have thought I would become an accidental advocate in the domestic violence space, but here I am.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So one of the things I'm gonna go back a little bit, because there's two things that I want to hit on that you mentioned, and one of them, which was a question that I was going to ask you, was how was your home life growing up? Because a lot of times we either purposely walk into or attract the things that we're familiar with, and so unfortunately sometimes we are familiar with these things because of our upbringing and because of the things that went on in our household, and so either we knowingly look for it or unconsciously we just attract it because it's our normal, is what we're used to. And so it's unfortunate that sometimes we are exposed to domestic violence at such young ages. So I remember my first exposure to domestic violence. It wasn't inside my home. And then on another thing, it wasn't, when we think about domestic violence, typically we think about a man violating a woman, but it actually goes in the opposite direction also. And so my first exposure to it was the opposite, right? So I remember I was in grade school, definitely, and it was a young woman and a young man. They had gotten into an altercation about whatever. She had took something from him that she was supposed to return. She didn't return it, whatever. So they kind of got into an altercation about it. But instead of just being like, okay, I'm gonna give you back, whatever it was that she had took from him, she flipped and it was like, well, you ain't gonna do nothing, and that whole thing. And so she hit him. And she hit him and he stepped back and he said, I'm not going to hit you because you're a girl. Now, again, we're in grammar school. Unfortunately for him, that was like the green light for her, And so when he said that, she hit him again. And so he just kept, kind of trying to retreat from her, and kept saying, I'm not going to hit you because you're a girl. But the more he said that, the more she went in, and it just got, now this, she wasn't a lightweight either. Let me put it that way. She could fight. She had like 3 brothers. She was on the boys wrestling team. Like, she was a hardcore female when it came to fighting in the first place. And then you're fighting someone who's not even trying to protect themselves. So it wasn't a pretty fight. But I remember that, that was my first time, seeing it up front in my face. And like I said, it's unfortunate that we are exposed to it at these different times, or just in general. But unfortunately, it is a reality that some of us grow up seeing on a day-to-day basis, or some people like yourself who may have seen it in their homes. So my next question I want to ask is, because we know that some people are exposed to it early, so do you think, and I kind of believe it, do you think that, and even if they see it and they know that it's wrong, that in some way they find themselves either being a victim or being the oppressor in those same situations? I mean, I don't necessarily know how to explain it.
Are you talking about the partner that causes the abuse?
Yes. Like they're seeing it, and even like when it's even directed towards them. So like children that are abused, physically abused when they're younger, they turn around and sometimes become the abuser to someone else. So I don't necessarily know why that happens.
Well, studies show that abuse is a learned behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all the things that I've learned since becoming an advocate. So to your point, you're absolutely right. There are many instances that abusive partners, they're simply doing what they've seen done. Specifically and especially, I hone in on the communities of color, specifically our community, for several reasons. The most important is I never want to speak out of turn. I
Right.
always want to speak from a perspective that I have lived experience, study, research. I don't want to shoot from the hip. And
Right.
so specifically in our community, that's what we are whooped. And if we go back a little deeper to why we whoop, what did the slave masters do to us? Right. So it's that perpetual generational, like you do what's been done to you. And so studies show oftentimes abusers, they abuse because they were abused, to your point. And so that's hope in that if a abusive partner learns abuse, guess what? They can unlearn it.
Mm-hmm.
They can unlearn it.
We're going to get to that because that was a interesting point of view that you had related to me, and about getting the abusive partner help, and that was a whole different mindset. Because and rightfully so, I definitely appreciate it, because oftentimes we do think about the victims and those that have been abused by someone else, but again, if someone is an abuser, there's some reason why they have that trait, and so we're gonna talk about that, in a minute. I don't want to jump ahead too much, but I did want to talk about that, and I remember myself. I don't have a lot of stories with domestic violence, but I do have some things that stick out in my mind, right? And so I remember when I was dating a young lady. I probably was like 18, 19. Good relationship. We never had no problems. In my mind already from the previous story that I shared, it always is in my mind about the domestic violence, right? So coming into any relationship that I was in, I heard them say, hey, look, we don't play fight. We don't wrestle. You know what I'm saying? We don't put our hands on each other. That's a no-go for me. It's zero tolerance with that. If you're not hugging me, then don't touch me. You know what I'm saying? So, and that was always my viewpoint. So I'm in this relationship with this young lady, and probably we're dating for a while. And for some reason, right, it was just like for 2 weeks, and I'm talking 2 full weeks, it was like she was pressing me to hit her. I mean, like she was pinching me, to slap me, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like we've never done that in our whole relationship. So like, why are you doing this? And I remember talking to someone, and I'm like, I get the feeling that she's purposely pushing me, for whatever reason. And so this one day, unfortunately, and I'm ashamed of it, but it's the truth. So this one day, we go to the mall, we're walking through the mall, and we're talking. And for whatever reason, I don't remember why, but she slaps me in the back of my head, right? And I'm bald, as you see. I went bald young, so I've been bald a long time. And it wasn't even that it hurted. It didn't hurt, but it was just the sound and the attention that it drew, because now everybody's looking at me like, she just slapped you. What you gonna do? And now I'm looking at her like, really? That, you know what I'm saying? So we get in the car, we're driving. I'm upset at this point. So I'm like, all right, we're driving, and she's still poking at me, and I'm like, what are you doing? And so by that time, of course, I was upset. And so I just gently hit her thigh. I just hit her thigh, just one good time, just boom, and I'm like, stop, like, I don't know what you know what I mean, what's going on with you, whatever, stop, and I take her home, I drop her off, I leave, I'm mad, I go home. She calls me, and she's crying, and I'm like, like what, like you, what, so she tells me this whole story. She has an older sister that lives in a different state. I've never met her sister. And she's talking to her sister, and for whatever reason, why I don't know, she's like, I think that he may hit me. And her sister's like, well, from the conversations we'd had and from what you've told me about him, I don't think he's that type of person. And so she makes a bet with her sister that I will hit her. So she purposely, for those 2 weeks, pushed me till I get to the point to where I hit her. And I'm like, are you serious? You know what I mean? Like, so now you want to cry after you purposely pushed me for 2 weeks to get to that point when we had already established in the beginning of our relationship that was a no-go in the first place. And so I don't even remember the conversation after that of like what would make her even think, to do that. But I'm just, I don't know. I don't even know if you have an explanation for it. It's something that I always kind of. I met her. I knew her mom and her stepdad. Her biological father wasn't in the picture at that time, so I knew her mom and her stepdad, and I had been around them and had great relationships with both of them, and I didn't see that from them, and so I'm like, I don't even know why or where you would even get that. That thought process from. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words for that, and it still bothers me to this day.
Can I help? Can I help to give you a little bit of context and possible perspective?
Definitely.
From an authentic place, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm speaking from my lived experience. For me, physical abuse equal love. And I didn't recognize that until I went into the shelter and I did a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's like trauma-informed therapy that takes you back to your childhood and helps shift the way one thinks. But my reality and my self-accountability and standing in my truth, Ernest, is that the abuse that I endured in this last relationship started 3 months in it. So we had started dating in 2018, and the first incident was in 2018. And he took me and he shook me by my neck. And when I look at it from a perspective of that, I can only control what's in my reach. It's like I have to stand in the truth of I thought that was love, and I love the notion of being loved more than loving myself. And so for some of us women, I don't know how many women will admit to it, but I'll stand in the gap and I'll speak my truth because I'm here to hopefully be like when I transition out of here, hopefully go to heaven with all of my gifts, out in the world. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, I have to be authentic and I have to be transparent and I have to be open and honest and vulnerable. So it sounds to me like that might have been what she wanted, is the physicalness to equal your love. And especially with us women, I believe that all of us are broken in some area. I don't care if you're Black, white, male, trans, all of us have experienced trauma in our lives. Mm-hmm. And from what I've learned through my own experiences is that some of us, wherever that trauma hits, that's where we get stuck mentally and emotionally, like the things that we can't see, the things that really matter, right? The mental stuff. And so if we're like my brokenness happened that I can remember at about 6-7 years old. And what I've learned through therapy is that I have to take that broken little girl everywhere I go, because I can't just rip that page of that trauma out of my story. So now I have the honor and the opportunity to protect her, and to protect her, that 7-year-old broken Jamie, is to stand in my truth. Like, and I still, like the gentleman that I'm dating right now, I still, Ernest, have to catch myself with some of the learned toxic behavior that serves no purpose in my life right now that I'm aware of it. So to answer your question, I believe if you were to dig a little deeper, if she trusts you with her emotions and her vulnerability, I bet you if you ask her like the why, and if she's started doing the work, meaning like just standing in her truth, it'll probably be something something. It's more than a bet. You know, that's the easy thing. Oh, I mean,
yeah, right. And I agree with you, because it has to be a thought first. So why would that thought even come to your mind to even, like I said, I don't even know what the conversation was, but I've never met her sister. I still have never met her sister to this day. And so I've never met her sister, never talked to her. And so there's no reason for her to bring it up. She don't even know me, you know? And so and again, she did tell me that she was the one who made the statement and the bet for whatever reason. I don't know. But so I don't know.
And here's the thing, I was listening to a podcast or something not too long ago, and the gentleman was like, we should go back, and it might have been Kevin Samuels before he passed away. The gentleman was like, we should go back and ask the people that we dated or that we were married to, how was it to date us? How was it to be married to us? So if it's really something that has you stumped, and if you think that you can have a conversation with her in a way that is healthy and can give you answers and not, ask her.
Yeah, I don't know. We're still friends, and I think we can probably have a conversation. But that one, I don't think we never even went back to. After that situation, we never had no problems with it. Even after we broke up and all of that, we still remain friends. So we've never even discussed that anymore. Here's the
thing. I don't even know. You opened up to that in terms of like the importance of having the hard conversations. See, those type of things, as little as they might seem after it's all said and done, if we just continue, especially as a collective black community, to sweep those things under the rug, we're less likely to get the healing collectively. Because see, as long as some of us are broken, we're all broken, right? But we all know, I'm sure you know too, like it starts with ourselves and then our ecosystems, and then we, venture out. So I would definitely challenge you to say, it might be something subconscious that she doesn't even recognize. Because she hit the wrong person, and they might layer out like my ex. I never hit him, but there are men and women walking around here with explosive personalities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That don't have the opportunity to control themselves. So there's some men that are not solid brothers like you.
Right. And that takes me to another story, and especially in this era, now that I think about it, with the whole notion or thing that's kind of coming out now, when people are talking about, the black man protecting the black woman. I remember another situation, probably around the same age time. I think I was probably 1920, still the same. And I remember picking up one of my friends. And again, I'm from Chicagoland area, but we were staying in the suburbs at that time. And he asked me to take me to his girlfriend's job. And at that time I had a car. I had a Buick Regal, which I love, the old school 2-door Buick Regals, which is a 2-door. So it's, you got to get in. If somebody else is getting in the back, they got to pull the seat up so they can get in the back, that whole notion. Anyway, so we drive to the city, and we goes to his girlfriend's job, and she's on her lunch break. So she comes out, and, he opens up the door. She gets in the back, and, he gets in, close the door. So they're talking or whatever. And then he asks her for some money, and she says, well, the only money that I have is my lunch money to get something to eat. So he says, well, give me that. And of course, she's like, no, I need to get something to eat. And so they kind of go back and forth or whatever, and he hits her. And so I'm like, oh, you already know where I stand with that. You know what I mean? So I'm like, dude. And so they kind of going back and forth and, start getting physical again. So I'm like, all right, stop. You know what I mean? I'm like, this not finna go down, right? And so I open my door and I let her out on my side. And I tell him, if you hit her again, you're walking home. You know what I mean? And now, again, we're in the city. So that's a long walk, But what I'm telling him, I'm like, dude, you know what I stand for. I can't tell what you do and how y'all do your relationship or whatever, but you know where I stand. And you're in my vehicle. So you're not going to do it in front of me, and you're definitely not going to do it in a in a environment that I control, which is my vehicle, And so, I let her out. She goes, back to work or whatever. But I was just thinking that, just little things like that always stuck with me for various reasons, and probably for a reason at such a time as this, to share these stories and things that has stood with me over the years. For various reasons. And so when I think about that one, I kind of just think about, our environments and the things that we have as a culture, to the point that I think some of these things are not necessarily, well, I can't say they're not promoted, because it is definitely promoted, but accepted to some degree. And I think a lot of it is because those of us like myself, are not always as vocal as we should be in the opposition, because the negativity and the stories and the examples of that is often plastered and showed and talked about in songs and videos and music and whatever, so we're often bombarded by these visuals or these audio visions of, domestic violence or, different things that's not beneficial, like you said, not beneficial to our person. You know what I mean? But I don't think it's enough of us that are standing up and voicing, the opinion or the viewpoint that, no, this is not right, this is not normal, and we're not going to accept it. And so I think, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, because I think that's what we need to have, and we need to let others know that whether you are the abused or the abuser, is not right on either side. You know what I mean? And somebody has to be the voice and the face to stand up and say, hey, look, I'm going to say it. If nobody else want to say it, it's not right. We're not doing it, and we're not accepting it. Just my spiel.
No, and that's why, there's several reasons why I'm honored to be on your podcast, but and that's one of them. Because you're using your platform, you're using your voice. You can be doing anything other than having this hard conversation this evening, right? So that's why I honor you. I feel honored to be here, because you're right. It's going to take, and it's, there's a study that shows that it takes one person doing one thing, and then you look back and then there's two, and then you look back and then there's three, and you look back and then there's five, right? But somebody said we got to start somewhere.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. And start there and say, hey, and one of the bigger and more important things, especially as it relates to Black men, you all, in my opinion, and I've dated a couple of y'all. I've only dated Black men, so I feel like I can say this. It's time to create safe spaces for each other to be emotionally weak and vulnerable.
Definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
And it's time for you all to say, to speak up and say, we're not having that, but from a brotherly love space, not from a condemnation place. Right. Because, as well as I do, if I'm being condemned, like when I came home 13 years old and pregnant and people were condemning me, that's where the shame and the guilt and all of that came from. Right. From that sector of people. But then I have my beautiful grandmother that said, you're not going to be the first, you're not going to be last. And if you have this baby, you're going to take care of her. And she showed me how to breastfeed, and she showed me how to change her diaper. She affirmed me. So now I've always stood in my truth of, I was 14 years old. I dropped out of, junior high school in the 7th grade and didn't go to all that, because by God's grace, I had my grandmother affirming me. The same concept, I feel like, has to be brought forward when it comes to Black men. See, one of the things that I'm very much convicted by, and that's one of my platforms, is the whole notion we've got to get abusive partners help, is when I went into the shelter, Ernest, I was it was COVID, so the city was shut down. So I don't know that I would have been there for 3 months had the pandemic not been there. But I was able to go into this homeless shelter as a victim of domestic violence and get the emotional, like the therapy I needed. I was able to get the roof that I needed to save my money so I can gain my economic and financial freedom back. I was able to get my furniture and stuff together, all of that, right? So I had a support system that held me up. I leaned in. Now, of course, I had to lean into it and do the work, but it was there. The conviction that I have is, as far as I know, my abuser did not have that same level of resources. I won't say same level. He did not have resources. And this is what triggered me. When I was a little girl, my stepfather, bless his heart, he made me and my sister's childhood so bad. And my mom. My mom's been passed away for about 22 years now. But I had the honor of asking him, my stepfather, about 7 years ago, why? Why did he do what he did? And he explained to me his childhood. And when I was experiencing my own things in 2020 at the shelter and all that, and looking at my abuser and all of that, what I recognized is, had my stepfather gotten the help that he needed, instead of running in the woods, we lived in the country, so he'd beat my mama up, we called 911, he'd run in the woods, he'd run in the woods and hide, and the sheriff would come and look for him, and then when the sheriffs left, he would come back in the house. And guess what? My mom loved him, so she would let him back in. I'm like, maybe, just maybe, had he got the help that he deserved, because he was facing and dealing with his own demons. And mind you, this is back in the 80s. The crack epidemic was real, right? Like, he was self-medicating. If he would have gotten the help that he deserved, not needed, but deserved, maybe, just maybe, me and my sister's childhood would have been different. So you fast forward to my abuser, and I'm not really sure why he did what he did. But if he was given the help, right, readily available, no shame, no condemnation, no, oh man, you this and you that, but just hey man, like, this ecosystem of, like, let's bring you into the fold and let's understand the why. Because studies show violent partners, the root of it is having a need for power and control. And so when we get to the why, the root, like in my career, I'm an analyst. I used to be an auditor for almost 20 years. So my mind is geared towards analyzing things and getting to the root so we can understand solution, going back to creating those safe emotional spaces for Black men to say, I hit her in the face and knocked her teeth loose, and I'm ashamed about, I need help. But as long as it's like, and here's the reality, like with my ex, the Joker is fine. So he gonna find somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. And if he doesn't get the healing that he needs, right, he's gonna just abuse the next young lady. I know I went on a tangent, but that's my
no, and because I agree with you, and I've had several guests on, male guests, and that has been our part of our conversations that we've had about building these safe spaces for men to have conversations that we don't readily have, and we've talked about several things, but definitely we talked about that, creating that space. And I like what you said, though, even about, getting them the help that they need, and how your abuser may not have had the resources. And even listening to you even say that and thinking about it, and I have to be honest, from my point of view, I don't think I've ever even heard of resources, for the abuser, male or female, and I, like I said earlier, because often we think about the victims, often we're thinking about those who, have been abused by someone else. But then again, when we think back again, like we said, it's a learned behavior. So it had to come from somewhere, and they had to learn it from somewhere. And so if we don't address it, beforehand, then I think we're doing ourselves and our communities a disservice by always waiting until you're the victim and, oh no, now let me help you. But if we could catch the abusers and get them to help, like you said, in enough time in the earlier parts, then I think we can save ourselves a lot of hurt, a lot of turmoil, and definitely break some generational curses that have been flowing throughout our communities, definitely. So, man,
and using the criminal justice system is not it, right? Like putting a man or a woman in jail or prison as a result of being violent without, now if they go, now I'm not condemning it, I'm just opening up the conversation for the possibility of other ways to solve the issue. Because what we know for certain now, Ernest, is like you put people that it's caused offenses to include abuse in prison or jail. Guess what? They come out worse than what they came in. They went in,
Yeah. And I think that part of that is because, especially in the climate now, is no longer a place where they're trying to reform you. You know what I'm saying? It's more of a place they're just trying to hold you for a certain time and then release you back into the wild. You know what I mean? And so you got people who are around some of the people who are the worst that society has, and you put someone in that group among them people, and even if they're not a bad person, they have to learn to cope in this environment. And unfortunately, to be able to cope and make it through the time that they have in that environment, they have to pick up some of those traits that allows them to survive that environment. So then when you release them back into society with these traits, these new traits that they picked up along with the ones that they went in with, what I mean? Now you're releasing them back on us even worse than it was when they went in, and I think that's a part of the problem. So, and when we do that, because again, like you said, not justifying the offense, but if you do have an offense and you are sent to be locked up to do a certain amount of time or whatever, I think that there should be and has to be some kind of program or something in place to help you to deal with those issues. Again, heal, fulfill, to deal with those problems, to heal from that pain that you've getting, and to be able to become a positive addition to our society, so that when you are released back into society, you are not that same person that went in, and I think that's I think that's where we at.
And to piggyback off of that, like we were discussing before we went on air, I've put my 2 books on hold to switch gears and go into this Women in Politics program out of Texas Women University in Denton, Texas. Because what I recognize, Ernest, is that my creator has given me a platform, and I dare not take it for granted. And with that, especially when it comes to our community, in order to make real difference and real changes, we've got to shape the legislation. Gone are the days of people that don't look like us telling us what's best for us. Case in point, when I went in, little things like this, when I went into the shelter, they had no Black hair products, even though Black and brown women have the highest cases of domestic violence, right? So just those just those cultural specific things that are truly needed for the survivors of domestic violence and for the abusive partners of color. Because what we know for certain is that we face challenges that other people don't face. And going back to sweeping things under the rug, we can't not talk about and expect a solution, right? And when we talk about, and I'm just talking about from my lived experience, Black men in the 90s, a lot of you all are convicted felons for marijuana, which is legal now. But I will say not a lot. Some of you all are convicted felons because you was selling crack cocaine. I mean, it was just that whole notion. So not only are you facing just being a Black man and trying to survive, then you have this background. So now stuff on your background. So now you can't vote, even though you can pay taxes. Now you're subjected to making $12 an hour, nothing more, nothing less. And then you're supposed to feel like a man. And then here I come along, this broken little girl, and I'm going to emasculate you because I make 6 figures and you don't, because you have all these other factors. And so to your point, a year ago, I decided to go and try to be the solution, for our community, to be the person at the table, having the hard conversations about our community. And during the program, I was introduced to what's called a House Bill 3529. And to basically make a long story short, is a pilot program that is geared towards reform of domestic violence abusers, and it's out of San Antonio, Texas. So to your point, and it's like to your point in terms of like, there's got to be a lot more people standing up for what's right, and a lot less like we have to make the light shine over the darkness. There is programs by God's grace that are being created to hopefully address the abuser while addressing the abused at the same time. So I know that was a 10, but that's it's the legislation. It's like, you know, it's the like we gotta when we're talking about domestic violence in the Black community, in the brown community, in order to truly address it and eradicate it, we need the men, we need the women, we need the abusive partner work alongside the abused part. We need the people in communities helping these men and women that have these criminal backgrounds get a decent job so they feel good about themselves. We need the emotional safe spaces for Black men that many of them, since I've been speaking, some of them have come up to me. Ernest, one man, he told me, he said he was raped in the 3rd grade on his way home from school. 56 years old, and we were in this conference together, and he was just now coming to grips with telling his parents, because his parents like in their 80s. Another young Black man came up to me, said he was molested for years. And the person that molested him, he asked him why. It was a relative. And he said he knew he couldn't get pregnant. These are the lost stories. One young man I met at a gas station, he'd been molested for years by his mom's best friend, a woman. And what I know, when I was molested, when my sister was molested, we get the resources, right? So when I came home pregnant when I tell my story now, I was pregnant at 14 as a result of just my body being exposed and just sexually misused. I get that instant empathy. I've gotten it for a long time. But when a young Black man, now that I'm realizing like what's been going on, when his hurt manifests in having all the babies, right? Having all the women, being abusive, it manifests in those different ways. So it's a matter of getting to the root, even when we're talking about the criminal justice system in our community. I got to start at home. The BIBLE say you got to start at the house.
Right. Man, Jamie, I'm so glad that I had you on. Man, and I love this conversation that we've been having. And definitely I have reached out to a couple guys that's their platform as far as, men opening up about, sexual abuse and things that they've been on. So I haven't had one of them on yet, but I have reached out to them. We have been in communication. So hopefully soon, we will have someone on to even discuss that. But again, like I said, I definitely have been having the conversations with past guests that have been on here about, developing these spaces, these safe spaces for men to have these difficult conversations. And so I know that it's in the works. It's slowly, it's slowly moving, but it's working. It's coming. And I definitely appreciate the work that you're doing, because definitely that lets me know that even in this journey of domestic violence, it's coming. Because it takes someone like yourself, like myself, to have these conversations, and then you to even go further to be the one to take it just from us having the conversation, but taking it to the heads where you can sit at the table. And I definitely appreciate that. Definitely appreciate having you on. I'm gonna let you have the last word to share your information, and also share the information for the hotlines of where someone could look and find help if that's needed for them. In a minute. So I want you to leave us with a thought, whatever off the top of your head, something to leave us with, and also share your information, your media information, and all of those things in a minute. So everyone, thank you guys for listening to us. Again, this is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. We have a lot of things coming up. Make sure that you guys follow us on YouTube, definitely, but definitely on our Facebook page, because in that Facebook page, you'll also be linked to our Deal, Heal, Fulfill community. And also you'll be able to find out about different things that we have going on. We got ebooks coming. We got webinars coming. Definitely you have other products coming. Definitely we got the Deal to Heal tees, t-shirts that's already available. So make sure you guys follow us on YouTube, definitely, so you don't miss a show, but also on Facebook, because you'll be able to have more of an interactive platform with us, where we can share more with you about what we have going on and other ways that we can help. And even you can reach out to our speakers and our guests that we have on. So Ms. Jamie, again, I thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for sharing your gift with us. Thank you for the work that you're doing. So I'm gonna let you have the last word. The floor is yours.
Oh, wow. Okay, Ernest, thank you. And my prayer for you is that our Creator continues to strengthen you and remind you, like He reminds me, that we cannot be weary in well-doing. So I honor you, King. Keep it up. Thank you for having me on your show. My last thoughts. Listen, y'all. If this small town little girl from Oklahoma can go from being homeless to now I get the honors of sitting on the board of directors for the homeless shelter I was in less than 2 years, by making the decision not to give up, making the decision that too many of our ancestors and the people that's gone before us have sacrificed too much for me to stay a victim, then I absolutely know it doesn't necessarily have to be domestic violence or molest. It can be any hurt, any trauma. What I know for certain is once we make the decision to overcome it, we absolutely can. If you happen to be watching tonight and you're experiencing domestic violence, whether you are the abuser or the person being abused, Earnest has the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Please reach out and get help. There are trained advocates that will answer the phone and that will walk you through for both victims and the abusive partners. Okay, let's break these generational curses of handing down the trauma. Let's hand down wealth. Let's hand down knowledge. And in order to do that, we have to be intentional and use the resources that are available to us. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the social media platforms under Jamie R. Wright, specifically Jamie R. Wright Speaker on Instagram. Please follow me and let's make this world a better place on purpose, you guys. And thank you again for having me, Ernest.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for being here. The numbers is going to be, as you can see, it's here now, but it's definitely going to be in the show notes. There's a number that you can call, and there's also a number that you can text. So if you can't call, you can text and get the help that you need. Jamie, thank you again so much for being on. Listeners, thank you guys. Again, this is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and my mission is to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. And so until next time, we will see you guys next week. Be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.